Let's do this. I'm going to share my screen and you're going to tell me when to change it.
Oh, right. Okay, even better, even better. So next slide. So a little bit about me, guys. I'm a qualified psychotherapist. I'm from the UK. I'm an emotional intelligence coach as well. And I've combined those two really to work with business owners, solopreneurs, small business owners who experience the ups and downs of business, but have to manage the emotional roller coaster that happens and the mental roller coaster that happens. And I call it clearing your emotional and your sort of mental head trash. So you need to get rid of that so that you can function in your business. You don't sort of feel like you're going to give up, which I know I get roller coasters myself like that, miss out on opportunities and experience, a loss in income. So that's really where I'm at. Next slide. Great. So everything starts with a thought in my world. But I know that everything starts with you. And as the title of today's is about elevating your impact in this world so that you can forge meaningful bonds. And in business, the one thing that you do have to be able to do is communicate with everyone and network. So it's a really important skill to develop. Next one, Lee. So what you'll learn in this session is ways that you can think differently so you can live a more powerful life and shift your perspective. I do believe it's about shifting your perspective. We hear a lot about mindset and shifting your mindset, but no one really goes into details. And so that's my job. I want to go into detail today, and I want you to help you to identify how emotions impact you and your business. Also recognize a little bit about burnout and rust out, so two words that you may have heard of. And finally, offer you some kinds of solutions. Got two systems I want to look at, the TEA system, my thoughts, emotions, action system, and then the 4Cs framework. And if there's any more within those slides, then I will share that too. So Lee, I should go quiet. You've worked out what I'm up to. Great. So, but before I can do this, guys, I do want us to figure out the emotional and mental junk in our trunks. And I'm talking about stuff that hovers in your mind, stuff that might end up staying in your body, and stuff that affects you on a spiritual basis, because I think this is what leads to changes in our moods. So let's do a quick assessment first before we get started. Now you're going to see a scale of 1 to 10, and I want you to think about the question. So Lee, if you can hit the next slide. Do you believe that you have any emotional and mental junk? Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to put down a 10 if you think, yeah, I've got lots, or 1, I haven't got very much. Just make a note of that. You can feed it into the chat if you want, or you can come back at the end and we can discuss that in the Q&A. But I'm curious just to see where you might be at the moment. So we got some 8s here, and yeah, 8, I can see an 8. So that's a high score. Any variation, that's entirely a personal thing. So think about that now. So I'm going to ask you this question at the end. Next one, Lee. Let's take a deep dive now into how we think. In my world, everything starts with a thought. And I know that I speak to my friends who are dealing with the body. They'll say, well, Joy, it starts in the body. Well, I'm going to say it starts in my head with my thinking. And that includes the thought that you had to attend today. Again, that started with a thought. Next one, Lee, right. So what does a thought look like? Now, this isn't obviously a real representation of a thought, but hey, you need to be able to visualize what's going on for yourself. So I like this little image of the brain with its glasses on because it's very smart and it's asking all these questions. What, where, when, why, how, with who? It keeps on asking these questions because the purpose of every thought is to make sense of what's happening to us. So it's a meaning-making machine. And the energy is visible under an ECG, electrical energy passing between the neurons. So if we go back to the previous one, Lee, thank you. So we all live in our own worlds, okay? And for every one of us, it's the next one, Lee. This is going to be complicated, isn't it? Right. Sorry about this, guys, but we all live in our own little world. Okay, and there's lots of data on this sheet. But for me, the center of the world is guess who? Me. And if you were looking at this, it would be you. So everybody else is feeling exactly the same way. We're all in our own little world. And data is coming at us from so many sources, as we said, from our sight, from our sense of smell, taste, hearing, touch, internal bodily sensations. We forget that we also are cognizant of heartbeats and stomach digestion, which was a really good talk we just had a minute ago about the stomach and the intestines. So definitely there. And we have a lot of thoughts a day. Now, the jury's out on the numbers, but you may have seen these numbers written down 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and they can be a mixture of negative and positive. There's actually 80% more negative thinking and a lot of repetitive thinking going on. Boring things like for me, oh, where are my keys? Where have I put my keys? Oh, where's the toothpaste? You know, these are very mundane things to really big things like what's happening in my business? Where's my next client going to come from? How am I going to be in the next moment because something that's come, a crisis has happened in my life? So there's some bigger thoughts. And 95% of these thoughts, again, another figure which you'll see bandied around, is it's unconscious, which is really quite scary. Now, what we are doing right now is conscious thinking. Okay. You can see me, I can see you. But what about the stuff that's happening that we're not really paying attention? So we have to label this process and we have to visualize it in our mind. We use our imaginations and we sometimes repeat it over to ourselves. So we wonder why we got an internal conversation going on, but we have to name it to claim it, and then it's filed away. So next slide, Lee. And as I said, all these experiences, everything that's happened to you from the moment you're born to the moment you die, you're trying to make sense of this. And your brain's trying to file it somewhere as best as it can. It tags and it bags everything. And for me, I would say it stashes it up in the attic in a big black filing cabinet. And it's never seen again sometimes. So you might be wondering, wow, where do all these thoughts go to? And when we talk about trauma, the brain is very inefficient at filing things because it's scrambling information, so it can misfile things, and that's why we can end up with other issues. Next one, Lee. Thanks. So there's a big problem, a big, big problem. I think that these repeated thoughts, they're like weeds and they grow into a forest, which becomes our beliefs. Now, it kind of rhymes. Very good with rhyming because it helps you to remember things, but there is a big problem when we look at our thinking. And the beliefs that we form, the rules that we form based on our life situation, the assumptions that we jump to, the guesses, I call them, they can become the soundtrack to your daily life and you're not even aware of it. And if you like going to like rock concerts, and you'll see that the lead singer will jump off the stage and he will get passed along by the crowd. So every day we're entering this situation, but it's repetitive. We did it yesterday and probably the day before. So it's automatic and it's unconscious. And for me, a belief is really just a thought that's repeated often, over and over and over again, till it feels like a fact. Thank you, Lee. So I hope you're still with me. We'll move on. I want you to do an exercise because you might not believe me about this automatic thinking stuff. Something very simple. It's an experiment. I'd love you to cross your arms, first of all, in front of you, the normal way that you do it. Just cross it in front of you, and hopefully you'll feel quite comfortable. Now, I'd like you to undo your arms, and now I want you to try crossing your arms, but using the opposite arm. So if it was right hand on top, I want you to put the left hand on top. Yes, I can see you doing that, Lee. Now, just leave it there for about 5 seconds. When you do it the opposite way round, I want you to notice in the next slide, Lee, thank you, free your arm, that's it. Did you notice that it felt a bit uncomfortable, a bit awkward? There might have been some mental resistance, like, hey, this isn't right, this isn't right. Because the subconscious is doing its thing. It's saying, hang on, this is not how we do it, guys. This is not energy efficient for me. I don't want to have to think about how to cross my arms. We know how to do this. So it's had to stop and recalibrate, a bit like a GPS. So habits are hard to break. And we're talking about bringing everything into your conscious awareness as much as you can. So self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and this word EQ, which you've probably seen quite a lot of the time. Next one, Lee. So our minds like to store old stuff. even when we say, let it go, like the song. And it's like this stuff washed up on the beach. It will sit there for quite some time unless you go through it and sift out what you need and what you don't need. And there are lots of thoughts that we could have. This is just a couple I've put down here, and it might be messing up your psychology. Thoughts that, hey, I'm not cut out for this job, or I'm too old, or I'm too young to be taken seriously, or I'm not a natural born leader. Lots of ideas on here. And this little stick figure is thinking, why am I having these thoughts? Logically, I know they're not true. So logically, we do know things are not true, but our emotions have a way of reshaping what we're feeling and what's happening to us. So next one, Lee, thank you. Now, there are some free resources which are going to be in the chat box, and I've dropped a few in, but there are 6 negative thinking patterns that you can look at. And it's really because we fall into these ways of thinking which we forget are just not sensible and also not very useful, especially catastrophizing, predictive thinking. We're doing that an awful lot as human beings. We also become quite black and white thinkers, or just we're very fixed in the way that we do things. We also get very critical, and we do a lot of I should, I must, I ought to. If you hear any of these patterns in your speech, then you know that your thinking is not entirely healthy and it might not be bringing you the things that you want. But the details on that will be in the chat. Thank you, Lee. So let's look at emotions. Now, entrepreneurs have feelings too. Of course we do. Now, here's a selection of emotions that you could feel. The top 6 are classified as the main ones that human beings have innately. So things like fear, anger, joy, sadness, disgust, and surprise. And then there are other feelings that we've got. And this is a selection of another 6 that you might be experiencing every now and then: overwhelm, anxiety, disappointment, guilt, shame, loneliness. Lots of feelings floating around, but yeah, we have feelings too, and we have to just become more aware of some of them. Next slide, Lee. And the biggest emotion, I think, is fear. And fear is a funny one because it can be real or it can be imagined. You can actually just sit here. We could sit here in this moment and think, oh my God, there's a couple of tigers roaming around outside. I just read a news report that there's some tigers on the loose. My God, I can hear something scratching at the door. You know, just that imagination, me telling that story, your heart rate has already gone up. You don't entirely realize it, but your heart rate has gone up and it's trying to respond to potential danger. You may have to fight that thing that's outside. You may have to do something. So your body is very, very good at alerting you to danger. So it's real or imagined. It's about self-preservation and self-protection. So for me, fear is a big, huge feeling. Next one, Lee. And because we're now becoming quite good friends, you're obviously becoming aware of which emotion is your emotional dynamite. I know that my fear gets triggered very quickly. And I also know that I have to listen to my bodily responses, sometimes heart beating, sometimes my stomach gurgling. I know that things happen to me physically, which are telling me that my stress response has been activated. Thank you, Lee. So let's have a little chat about burnout. Now, burnout's an interesting thing that happens to human beings. It's a name that's obviously been invented, but it describes a physical sensation and mental, let's say, things that are happening for human beings. It could sound like this: I'm tired, I can't think straight, I'm zoning out, I really can't handle another problem, obstacle, or task. I simply can't be bothered anymore. And there's an internal cry for help. Sometimes we voice it to other people, which is great. It can look like apathy, like loss of interest. So it's interesting how it pans out. Next one, Lee. So burnout and rust out. So rust out is the opposite of burnout. Burnout, we're overwhelmed with stuff, too much to do, etc., etc. Rust out is boredom. In fact, not interested in what I'm doing. I'm not being stretched enough or challenged enough. So you might be missing out on life events. There might be a fear of failure going on for you. You might be feeling unappreciated. You might be overwhelmed. You might be experiencing poor health. You might know there's a sense of lack of life balance there between personal life and your work life, and emotional baggage, which you're not always aware of, but not dealing with issues from the past can be a big issue and contribute to this. So I hope that you're getting the picture. And again, the resources are there. They'll be in the chat box that's being done, or I will put that again at the end. Next slide, please, Lee. So let's take a look at some of the solutions. Solution one is the TEA framework, thoughts, emotions, actions. Now, you need to be tracking this all of the time. Next slide, Lee. Because there's a cycle that's going on between your thinking, what you're feeling, and what your action. One triggers the other. And thoughts and emotions are like best buddies. They really do work together. And you have to develop a kind of thought tracking system. You also have to develop a system where you're mapping your moods and noticing what's happening there, and also your behaviors or your actions, behavior busting, so that you can begin to untangle what's going on for you. Next slide, Lee. And I want you to become good at observing these things that are happening in your life. I want you to write down your thoughts, your emotions. So an event will get triggered. I want you to think, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? That would be around round one of, like, let's say, using this particular cycle, and you're deconstructing a situation so that you can reconstruct it and introduce an alternative one. Next slide, Lee. So there are, again, another PDF that I will be dropping again into the comments, or afterwards you can get that from me. But I want you to think about slowing things down and getting things on paper and understanding the cycles that you're going around, because there are vicious cycles and there are virtuous ones. The virtuous ones, they're good. Vicious ones, you've got to be very careful of. And this is a way of tracking it on paper. So you're disrupting what's going on so that you can change your perspective. Next one, Lee.
Yes. So I'd like to actually ask if we could stop right here and turn this into the Q&A portion of this. If there one more thought that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, I'd like to continue. No, okay, Lee, I will
I
be
know you would
sensible.
like to
Yes,
continue, you know
of
what?
course I'd like to continue, Lee. You know, but yeah, you know what? Why not? I've given a lot of information so far, and we got around to one solution. There was one more which went with that one, but hey, that's life. We'll deal with it, because there may be some
Applause.
questions that
Let
you
me just
have.
give you some applause because
There may be some questions that you have based on what I've said so far. So if you
well,
have any questions, feel free.
this is the beauty of it. You give us lots of information,
Uh-huh.
incur lots of questions, and we get to ask you about it here. So Eugene actually has a question for you.
Go
I
ahead,
w-
Eugene. Love to hear from you.
I will be super quick. First of all, thank you for the presentation. And
My pleasure.
my super quick question: how do you change your state rather fast? Because as an entrepreneur, sometimes we wake up and I don't want to do a thing. I'm paralyzed with fear or anxiety or just negative spiral. But I need to work today. Like I need to do calls today. I need to do business. How do I just like that, like reprogram myself for, I don't know, like for next 4 to 6 hours so I can actually do business?
I hear what you're saying, Eugene, and I understand that feeling myself. So I would again come back to this idea that everything starts with a thought and ask you to question, what am I thinking? So unless you know you've got a physical illness on the go, and that could be creating the tiredness that might be in your body, or possibly been diagnosed with depression, and yeah, again, that will slow you down and change your thinking. If none of those things are present, then I want you to work out, what am I thinking? Now, if you've got a particular type of work to do, it might be that you have an idea about that bit of work, that you can't do it, or it's too difficult, or, there may be some thinking around that may be stopping you. So your thought might be, oh, goodness me, I've got so much on today, I don't know where to start. Now, what feeling might be generated after that might be, hey, I'm feeling like a bit anxious now, or I'm feeling a bit fearful, or actually I'm feeling sad because I did this yesterday and I'm doing it again today, So there might be a feeling that comes off the back of that. And then you might take some action. So the action that you might choose to take is, I'm just going to stay here for another 5 minutes. perhaps another 10 minutes. In fact, I don't think I get up at all. Now, that could be round one. So, off the basis of those three things, what thought might come up from those three things? It might be that, yeah, you know what? I'm such a waste of space. This happened to me yesterday. Ah, what is wrong with me? Now we're sinking into some deeper and deeper feelings to do with shame, possibly guilt, you name it. Now you have to break that cycle. And I would encourage you to think about the thought might be, what do I need to think in order to get my work done? What thought would I need to have to like get me out of bed? And you can think of millions of thoughts. You might think, well, I personally would think, well, do you know what? I can do this. I've done this before. I'm a very capable woman. I can find out the information. I could call a friend. I will get this done. So that thought might be, as you said, forcing the issue for you, like, hey, but it's going to change the way that you feel because you're just questioning that original thought. We're always about breaking that thought and challenging it. So the other process is checking it, challenging it, and changing it. You need to be able to do that. So that would be a new thought, which hopefully will generate a slightly more enlivened emotion for you, which then might get you out of bed. Getting out of bed could be a win for the day. Sometimes it feels like that. So
Hmm.
don't, you know, knock yourself for having that. At least I got out of bed today. I'm thinking, yeah, great. At least I brushed my teeth today. Yeah, I'm thinking, great. So see every little step then as a win, and that's going to help to fuel your I can do that attitude. That would be
Absolutely.
my suggestion.
Absolutely. I went through that process personally myself. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as well. We have time for another question. But I went through that process myself. I feel like I couldn't do anything. And looking at the big world and everybody's so accomplished. And look at you, you can't even clean up. Look at you. And after just changing one thing here and there, changing my thoughts about it, it's really been helpful.
And it sounds easier than said, doesn't it? I mean, like change your thoughts, like, yeah, how do I do that? You know, like not like changing your clothes, is it? But you do have to work out that there's a system that's going on in me that perhaps no one's explained to me. And I do have a way of breaking this down. Oh, there is a connection between what I think and I feel. Some people don't even spot that. So
Hmm.
you're already winning, okay? And then working out that when I think this and I feel this, I end up doing this. Now you're winning. You've got three things that you could possibly change. And breaking any of those parts of the cycle is going to be a good thing because you literally, if you change one part of the system, you have to change the others. The other two change. It's very scientific. You know, if I change the way that I behave, like, hey, I felt really awful and I felt bad, but hey, so I'm going to move. I'm going to go for a run, or I'm just going to jump on this thing and get it done. It may immediately your mind saying, "Oh, Joy's getting something done. Oh, isn't she? She's pretty smart. I didn't realize she was like that." Then your emotion is like, "Hey, I'm feeling a lot better about this situation," and that might encourage you to do more. So you're creating what I would call
Absolutely.
either a positive spiral that's really going up and fighting that negative spiral that's going to take you into the quicksand. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Joy, it's been a joy. You've never heard that before. No one's ever said that to you,
Oh
right?
no, no, no one's ever said that to me. Of
Joy,
course they have.
of course you have. Of course you have. Joy, it's been a joy. Let's tell us a little bit about how they can find you. What's
I'm
going on with you?
on LinkedIn, so please look out for me on LinkedIn by all means. Karen Joy Langley or Joy Langley, you'll find me. There will be some information in the chat for you as well. But my website, joylangley.com, you can't miss me there. And yeah, I'll invite you to come and have a chat with me, download the assessment, look at the ways in which you think, and come and talk to me about it. So perhaps I can help you to work out what your next step is going to be. It's always, I'm about it being as emotionally intelligent as you can. And I suppose I was doing this kind of work way before it had a word. Uh, Emotional intelligence is about self-awareness. I
Absolutely.
don't think you get to be this big in life without having some awareness.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
especially in
Well,
business, you need to network. It's about people.
yes, it is. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Applause, applause.